Tēnā koutou kei ngā iwi huri nui te ao, nau mai hoki mai anō kia Tapatahi. Kia ora and welcome to the program. Thanks for joining us. Well, coming up on the show today, later this afternoon, we'll find out if and when we move to Alert Level 2. The government has been under increasing pressure from the opposition, business and tourism groups to reopen the country. The Tourism Minister and Tai Tokerau MP Kelvin Davis joins us from Parliament. We discuss what a shift to Level 2 will mean for the hospitality sector, kura and your tamariki. And we've also heard stories about tamariki and Pakeke using lockdown to learn to kōrero Māori. The head of the Māori Language Commission is with us to discuss the impact, positive and negative, that COVID-19 has had on te reo Māori. And the winner of the Fonterra Dairywoman of the Year, Ash-Leigh Campbell of Ngāi Tahu, joins us. And COVID-19 has turned two ukulele musicians into online stars. But first, here's Pōtaka Maipi with the news.
Tēnā koe Shane, kei aku pare huri noi te motu a ta Māori e. Hei te ahiahi nei ka mōhio te motu āwhia ka nuku tātou ki te taumata ohiti tuarua. Ka noho te motu ki te taumata ohiti tuatoru mo ngā wiki e rua. Kei raro i te taumata hau ka whakatuwhera anō ngā toa hoko maha, ngā toa hoko kai pāpara kauta ngā wāhi ha kinakina me ngā kura ako. Kei raro ngā tikanga aku, tikanga horo i ringaringa. Kei te tau patu ngā kai whakahaere pakihi āwhia te wā tika ka nuku, whai muri i te whakaruhi o te ohanga o Aotearoa. Ka raru te ahu mahi tāpoi o Aotearoa i raro anō hoki te taumata ohiti tuarua. Ka hono mai te minita take tāpoi a Kelvin Davis kia Tapatahi a koko ake nei. E tātahi ana te māpu mangaru Kingdom o Waikato, mōna e mahi ana hei rātonga tuku rawa whaitake. Hoi, e mea ana te māngai o Kingitu heitia ki te kore te kenge e toro atu ki ngā whānau, mā wai ke atu. Anei te pūrongo, a kere am right.
E whakahahanitia ana te māpu mangaru o Waikato mo e nei mahi whaitake.
The first concern is that there is a redneck movement out there that is absolutely against Māori providing manaakitanga for Māori, by Māori, into Māori homes.
It's insulting, but we're not surprised. The fact is that people need to be fed and we're going to feed them no matter what.
Ko rāhui paparawa ko Paula Ormsby. Ko te rōpū haura Māori, ko hāpai te haura e aki ana i te Māori, kia mātau ai ki ngā whakataunga a iwi, mo te taru e matapai tiana, ka tino tau tohe tia, i mua i te kōwhiringa pōti ka wanatanga i tēnei tau. Ka whai tēnei i te putanga o te tauira whakamutunga o te pire, taru i te pītau o tēnei marama.
We already understand that Māori are disproportionately affected by cannabis-related harm in the sense of from a health perspective, but also very much so from a justice perspective.
Ko Salahat. He māma ki ngā tamariki tokotoru i rotorua kei te hora i ōna pūkenga kanikani Māori ki runga pukamata i tāna whārangi ko te Māori o te poi. He mea tākea mai te ngau o te mate karauna ki te ahumahi tāpoi e mahi nāia me tōna aroha nui ki te mahi poi. Anei tō mātou kaikawe reo a Tāroi Black.
Ko Wikitoria tūhaka Raina Simon te kai kōkiri i te whārani pukamata o Māori o te poi. Ka tuku pōhi i a rā mō nā here ki a tātou i Aotearoa.
The timing has come for te Māori o te poi to be able to lift up everyone's Māori and their spirit.
Huri aki ana ki te riki, ākua nei ka hoki mai te paumuri mo te Kapa Warriors a Jared Beale ki te ora, ka taia ia te tākoro mo te Kapa Warriors. Kei te whakarite tonu ngā kapa o te whakataitai NRL ki roto Ahitreiria mo te timatanga hei te 28 o tēnei marama. Ka noho te Kapa Warriors ki Tamsworth, Ahitreiria mo te katoa o te whakataitai. Kāti, mo te upoko o tēnei haura, me hoki kia Tapatahi.
Tēnā koe pōtaka o tira tēnā no tātou ki tā tātou kaupapa tuatahi. Cabinet is set to decide if and when we will move to Alert Level 2. The country has been under Alert Level 3 for almost 2 weeks now. A move to Level 2 would see a significant loosening of lockdown conditions, with businesses such as retail outlets, hairdressers, restaurants, bars, sports facilities and schools allowed to reopen with strong hygiene and distancing rules. Gatherings of more than 100 people, both indoor and outdoor, will still be banned, but New Zealanders will also be allowed to travel around the country and visit friends in whānau. The government has been under increasing pressure from the opposition, business and tourism groups to reopen the country. The tourism industry, once the country's top earning sector, has collapsed in a few short weeks. Ngāi Tahu has closed all but one of its tourism businesses and reduced its workforce from 348 kaimahi to 39. Tourism Minister Kelvin Davis joins me now from Parliament. Tēnā koe, Minister.
Morena, Shane, tēnā koe.
Morena. Thank you for joining us this morning. How important is it for you to move to Level 2?
Well, it's very important for the tourism industry, by all means. Tourism was the first industry to really feel the effects of COVID-19 and it'll probably be one of the last to emerge from its shadow. As we know, tourism has stopped and we understand, we know that people are really hurting. So it's very important that we move to Level 2 so that people can start moving around the country, start enjoying the amazing sights and experiences that we have here in Aotearoa.
We heard the news out this morning in Germany. They obviously moved to loosen some of their restrictions last week and now they've seen a spike in positive cases. Is that weighing on your mind as you're about to join your Cabinet colleagues this morning to make this decision?
Yeah, absolutely. Those are some of the real tough calls we're going to have to make today in Cabinet. We'll be guided by health advice. I've been reading the papers over the weekend and it's a big decision to make. We know that if we get it wrong and people sort of go out and mix and mingle, there's a huge possibility that we may see COVID-19 rear its head. And that's the last thing we want. As a country, as an economy, as a tourism industry, we don't want to go bouncing back up the levels. So it's going to be a very intense conversation today in Cabinet because we've got to really make the best decision that we can with the information available in front of us for the good of the country.
Let's go back to the effects that COVID-19 has had on the tourism sector and will continue to have on the sector. What advice have you received as Minister about that impact? How many jobs will be lost? How many businesses will go under?
Well, look, there's about 230,000 people who are directly employed by tourism and about another 160,000, 70,000 who are indirectly employed in tourism, so it has a huge impact on our economy. Tourism not operating, it contributes about 18 to 20 billion in GDP to the country. So it has a huge impact, and it's really important that we do all we can to support the industry. That's why the government put out our big package as soon as this hit, around about $12 billion to support businesses through things such as the wage subsidy. We've got a small business cash flow loan scheme, there's a business finance guarantee, a whole heap of measures that have been there not just for tourism but for all businesses to try and help them manage their way through this very difficult time. And it's good to see that it's over 80% of tourism businesses have actually taken up the wage subsidy scheme. And that's been a little bit of help for businesses through this very difficult time.
Based on the numbers that you shared earlier and based on my calculations, roughly 400,000 New Zealanders work in tourism. Based on the advice that you're getting from your officials, approximately how many of them do you think will still have a job once we get out of COVID-19? Are you receiving that type of specific advice?
Oh, look, we're receiving all sorts of advice, and we know that there are going to be job losses. We've been very clear from the outset that we won't be able to save every job and every firm, but what we're trying to do is help as many as we can. In tourism, the ones who can manage their business through this time, who can hibernate, who can restart, they're the ones that are going to get through this. And they'll come out stronger. We know that in the future, as people start moving around the country, the domestic tourism is a light on the horizon, but it will be a bit softer than it has been in previous years as people are a bit hesitant to move, to travel at the moment. Many families have had a reduction in income. So we've got a domestic campaign ready to go. The timing is crucial. It would be a bit hard on whānau if here we are saying your patriotic duty is to go and travel and see all parts of the country when they may not have the income that they used to have. And Tourism New Zealand has been tasked with that job. They've had to pivot away from their core function of international marketing and swing towards domestic tourism. They're experts in that area in marketing.
Because we only do have a short amount of time, but do you have a number? Are you able to quantify the number of jobs that may be lost as a result of COVID-19? Simple yes or no, if you can, so we can move on to talk about this week's budget.
Oh, look, it's hard to determine. We just know that if we don't, if we can't get the help to the tourism industry that we want and we're going to get, then there'll be large, numbers of people who will be, who won't have a job at the end of this.
Okay. Let's talk about this week's budget, and obviously it's still under consideration by Cabinet, by you and your colleagues. But can tourism operators expect any additional relief out of this week's budget?
Look, you know that I can't preempt any conversations in the budget, but I'm going out there and advocating for the tourism industry. I've had conversations with my colleagues, and everybody, and the whole of Cabinet knows just how important tourism is to our economy, to all of New Zealand. So those conversations have been had, but I can't talk anything about what may or may not be in the budget.
Quite right, and thank you for that. Let's talk about another one of your portfolios, education. What advice have you received about our Māori tamariki and how they're coping during COVID-19?
Well, look, it's all our tamariki, Māori, Pākehā rānei, they've had to stay at home and the Ministry of Education did an amazing job in a matter of weeks getting resources out to them, getting digital devices out to whānau so that they could do their work basically at a distance. The Ministry of Education has been engaging with schools and kura, and we're doing the very best we can in these trying circumstances. Many whānau have actually enjoyed the opportunity to work with their tamariki at home, learning what they're learning, seeing what they're seeing, and participating in learning with them. But we know that not everybody will have the same experience with their whānau experience at home. So,
well, can I just explore that further with you? Because there have been reports about the difference in support that mainstream and Māori kura kids have received. Is that something you've investigated?
Well, if you're referring to the people saying that Kohanga Reo tamariki got different packs to, here's the Māori packs and here's the non-Māori packs of resources, and that's actually not the case. What's happened was that the Kohanga Reo got their Reo Māori packs, and then there were the other packs as well. They were getting both of them because the other ones, contain scissors and crayons or whatever, those sorts of things. So they got both sets of packs. So I think the kōrero that there's different resources for Māori and Pākehā just simply isn't the case.
No, that's good to hear. Let's talk about your constituency, Tai Tokerau, which pre-COVID-19 has struggled with employment and other social issues. What is it looking like for your electorate, for Te Tai Tokerau, as we move to recovery out of the recovery phase, if you like, of COVID-19? What reports are you receiving in that regard?
Yeah, look, everybody's doing it tough. That's why it's important we can, as soon as possible, get back down to level 2. We know that under level 3, 75% of businesses were operating again, so people could get back into work, and under level 2, almost all businesses will be operating again, although probably slightly reduced volume. And that's what's really important. In terms of tourism, in Tai Tokerau, we know that it contributed about $1 billion annually to Northland. And so, again, as the Minister of Tourism, you know, my concern for my own electorate is that we're able to help them to get back on their feet at the moment. It's, of course, everyone's heading into the winter months where there are fewer tourists. So, you know, there's a whole heap of challenges that are ahead of us. But you know, again, the government's focus in this budget is on jobs, employment, and so I think people should look forward to Thursday to see what's going to come out of it, not just for Tai Tokerau, but across the whole country.
Can I also ask you, as the local MP, your thoughts of the amazing work that we've certainly seen on this program of iwi, NGOs, social service, health groups coming together in a Māori sense to respond and to support Māori. What's your take on that?
Yeah, it's been fantastic. You know, we got $56 million pulled together in a very short space of time. Myself and my ministerial colleagues, Willie Jackson and Mahuta Peni Henare, and we got that money out the door really quickly, and it was great to see. I think we had some 43 iwi got money almost immediately to help with their pandemic plans to get health packs out to whānau and all sorts of support. So the government and iwi have been working really well together. I met twice a week with representatives from the Iwi Chairs Forum. My officials were meeting with them daily, and they brought issues to us, and you know we work together to help our people, and it's great to see that the numbers of infections for Māori are significantly lower than our numbers as a population. I think 8% of the people with COVID were Māori, and you know, we're 16% of the population. So, you know, what everybody has done together has been really good, and it's stopped the sort of thing that happened in 1918 from occurring this time around. You know, and my whānau is one that lost my great-grandmother in the 1918 pandemic.
Calvin Davis, Tourism Minister, thank you so much for your time this morning. We do really appreciate it. Tēnā koe.
Kia ora. Tēnā koe.
And we'd love to know your thoughts on today's program. Please post your feedback on our Facebook page or send us an email, tapatahi@māoritelevision.com. Well, coming up after the break, what does a shift to level 2 mean for you and your tamariki, and what plans are in place for the hospitality sector to return, reset and recover? Kia ora anō and welcome back. While we've heard many sad stories about how COVID-19 has affected whānau, we've also heard some great stories like the number of whānau that used the lockdown period to sharpen up their te reo Māori skills. One of the goals of the Mahi Korona, or the government's Māori language strategy, is for at least 1 million New Zealanders to be able to speak basic te reo by 2040. The Māori Language Commission, Te Taurawhiri Te Reo Māori, is the lead agency responsible for implementing the strategy. The Chief Executive, Ngahiwi Apanui, joins me now. Tēnā koe, Ngahiwi.
Tēnā koe, Shane Taurima.
Mōrena rā, what stories can you share with us about the uptake of te reo during lockdown?
I guess we've been, working with different communities around the country. You were part of a meeting with the Minister prior to the COVID-19 lockdown, and she asked us to contribute to lifting the weight of our people, and that's what we've been doing, working with the Māori Comms group that's been set up by the government, also trying really, really hard to work with COVID Command as well, to get them to look at a more nuanced approach to communications, particularly to Māori, and particularly to our pakeke, and also to our Pacific whanaunga as well. So those things for us, I think, when we look forward in terms of the implementation of the Mahi Korona, one of the things that I want to see is a change in the default settings for the public sector. We're not quite there yet, we're just starting, but one of the things I'd like to see in about 4 years' time, when we do the review, is that the default settings and the way that the sector approaches things like the the COVID-19 lockdown, particularly around communications, has a more nuanced approach.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I guess there's been I think people have been complaining. I've seen the complaints on Facebook. I've had people complain to me about the one-size-fits-all kind of approach to the communicating key messages across there, and I get that. I get that, and but the important thing for me is that we don't do this again. We look at it and we say, okay, not only do we love Te Reo Māori, we understand how the culture works. We understand more of the Māori settings, and we can, the language is not, the communications campaign shouldn't just be built around translating key messages. It should be built around what our people listen to, their triggers, the things that are important to them.
I appreciate you may not have any hard evidence, but I'm interested to understand whether or not COVID-19 has had a positive impact on the goal, on the lofty goal that I mentioned at the outset about achieving 1 million speakers by 2040.
Well, I think what it's done is, for me, it's brought out a number of aspects that we need to look at. And one of those is that, learning Te Reo Māori, or having a Māori language plan, isn't just about Te Reo. It's about our tikanga, it's about the way our people think, it's about our history. So when you start learning Te Reo Māori, you get dragged back through New Zealand's post-colonial history when you start to learn about those things. So that's been a great thing. But what it's also done is it's provided us with an opportunity to understand where we're at. You'll understand that there is an implementation plan in place, which is put together by Te Puni Kōkiri for this year. And we've been able to look at the behaviour of our partners. And look, I'll go back to this again. We're generally starting at ground zero here. There's nothing. If we look at the baselines, you can just about assume that in terms of those three areas of the strategy, value, acquisition and use, that we're starting off at around zero or somewhere close. And so the capacity isn't quite there for the sector to do the things that we'd like them to do. So while I say we need to change the settings, it's also about providing some capacity building as well. And so that when we're finished with this whole thing, when we've got it in place, hopefully nice and embedded and in the muscle memory of the sector over the next 5 to 10 years, it's really about engaging the sector more than anything else, engaging the sector. And then I think the following 10 years will be about establishing infrastructure so that Te Reo Māori is in there, is embedded into the muscle memory of the sector and of all New Zealanders.
You talk about building capacity within the sector. Does that mean you're hopeful for this Thursday's budget announcement that there may be some resource and support there to be able to support the Commission in its work?
Look, we've done some financial modelling, and we know that based on our current resourcing, we're going to be in a bit of trouble in the next couple of years. So we're very hopeful that we're going to get some additional resource, particularly around building our ICT infrastructure, and I've joked with the staff, only half joked really, that a drunk toddler could burgle or hack our system. And it is pretty old, our system. So we need an ICT system that allows us to get out there virtually and do the work that we need to do, because we're a small organisation and we don't have the people available to run around the country and service everybody in terms of language planning support and Māori language support. But what we can do, and what we're looking to do over the next 6 months, is to establish our online language planning centre with resources that people can access. And it's essentially a virtual whare where you can go and you can download templates, you can get virtual assistance for hopefully about all the things we can anticipate, all the needs that we can anticipate that our people will need.
Talking about virtual and taking a virtual approach, how far advanced are your plans for Te Wiki o Te Reo Māori? And because of COVID-19 and the impact that it's had on requiring social distancing, etc., are we going to see the week, your approach to the week done a bit differently this year?
I think this year it'll be a lot different. There is, I was joking with staff before lockdown saying, look, we're going to have a virtual parade where we can march around our living rooms with signs and things supporting Te Reo Māori, and unfortunately that's the way it's going to go. We're going to have a virtual Te Wiki o Te Reo Māori this year. We won't be able to gather in the way that we would like to gather, so the parades are probably off the table. There may be some mini parades. But we're going to have to be, like everybody, we're going to have to be agile. We're going to have to adapt, and we're going to have to be innovative about the way that we approach it. And so, essentially, the biggest impact that COVID-19's had on us is the inability for us to get together and call the large gatherings that have been such a feature of Te Wiki o Te Reo Māori over the past 3 or 4 years. So we're looking at how we deliver that online. We're looking at how we use our online platforms a lot better. And hopefully we'll have that finalised in the next month.
Tēnā rawa atu koe, kai taku tuakana e mihi atu ana mātou ki a koe, tēnā koe.
Tēnā rawa atu koe, tēnā koutou.
Ngahiwi Apanui, the CEO of Te Taura Whiri Te Reo Māori. Well, the hospitality sector has been hit hard by COVID-19. Some businesses have closed for good, some are in survival mode, and some have changed their approach to get through the rest of the year. Manaaki Management is a Wellington-based events management company. Paul Retimanu joins me now. Tēnā koe, Paul.
Oh, kia ora, Shane. How are you?
Very good, thank you. Very good. Thank you for joining us this morning. Before we talk about level 2, how has the pandemic affected your business?
Yeah, look, it's been quite significant. I mean, we went 4 weeks ago, or 7 weeks ago, I should say, when we went into lockdown. Basically, we went from just under 450k turnover a month down to 0. So for the 7 weeks we've been going now in lockdown, we've lost nearly 900k. So it's quite significant for us. Interestingly enough, just prior to the lockdown, what we did notice was about 3 weeks prior to it, we started seeing our conferencing market sort of heading south. So 3 weeks prior to the lockdown, we probably had about 2 or 3 maybe postponements, cancellations. By the time we got to the end of that week, it was up to about 50. So we sort of had to move our company, pivot our company really, really quickly prior to the full lockdown. So that's where we sort of got to at this point.
That is significant. And what has that meant for your staff?
Yeah, look, with the wage subsidy, that's obviously kept everybody going at this point. We're not sure if it's going to continue on through. It is probably band-aiding the employment issue currently. We've got about 70 staff. We're sort of thinking we're probably going to have to let go at least 50-55% of those, depending on what the market does when we do come back. But yeah, look, it's not pretty, and we're still having to wait to see what happens once we get down to level 2, but preferably level 1.
You talked about the wage subsidy. I'm interested to understand your feedback or your thoughts on the government support of the hospitality sector. What's your view on that?
Yeah, look, our industry, our sector is really in trouble. To put some context around that, we have 22,000 hospitality businesses in New Zealand. Our sector employs 170,000 people prior to COVID-19, $6 billion contribution to GDP. What we're seeing at the moment is that we're losing $40 million a day, so we're just under $2 billion so far. We're sort of, estimates are 15 to 20% of our businesses won't make it. That's sort of 3,500 to 4,500 businesses in our sector won't get through. Employment numbers, best case scenario, we're sort of thinking 30%. That's 51,000 jobs will be gone. Worst case scenario, and I think it'll be probably closer to this one, it'll be 40%. I mean, you're talking 68,000 jobs. So, look, there's some challenges for sure. The problem we've got is obviously we've got to reduce our numbers. The Prime Minister's come out with the new regulations where it's seated separation single server. So we've had reduced numbers in our spaces, 100 people max, and we totally understand that. Look, it's public health first and foremost. But there's a couple of things that we'd really need to sort of see the government get in behind us. And the first thing what we really need is we need a minister to champion our cause. So if you look at tourism and so forth, everybody has a minister. We don't. Now, for 170,000 jobs, we sort of need somebody to amplify our challenges for us. The second thing we probably need, Shane, is we need a bit of time. And 7 weeks ago, in 7 weeks that we've been in lockdown, we've had to change our complete business model. So my example to that is this. Now, if I look at our business model, for instance, pre-COVID, we had a restaurant and a cafe, Karaka Cafe, and then we had 3 function centres. Coming out of COVID, the conferencing side is obviously going to be sort of very limited. We sort of don't see that sort of coming back till about spring at best, which is September. But on the cafe side, we know that our numbers have reduced, so we're having to pivot our business. So we've moved into that residential market where the Uber Eats, the Delivery Easy, so we're moving into that market, which we haven't done before. And the second thing we're doing in the cafe also is we're just having to make sure that we're giving great service to be able for people to come back to a reduced number. So we're having to sort of change the ambience, the environment. So we've invested heavily in that. And the third thing that we've had to do is we've set up Kia Ora Kai Catering. So now we're going to do morning teas, lunches, afternoon tea deliveries to the corporate market. So taking it to them as opposed to them coming to us. So we have to change our whole model, really.
So just going back to the two things that you think that the government should support you in that respect, a minister responsible for the sector. What was the second? Can you just clarify that again for me, please?
Yeah, the second thing, sorry, is we need some time, and we need to buy ourselves some more time. What does
that mean? More cash?
Absolutely. So that's some wage subsidies for the first thing, because then that'll be able to keep us to be able to hold our staff through the winter months that are coming through now. The second part to that is, we know there's the loan guarantees where the government's backing 80%, but it's a really high bar. And as we know, they've only given out 170 of those loans so far to date, $23 million so far to date. They've budgeted $6.2 billion. People aren't applying for it. And for hospitality, the sector, we obviously deemed as a risk, and we totally get that. But we sort of need a bit more continuity and a bit more messaging from the government to be able to, for a lot of our members, to be able to get that funding. And then the third part to it is just around some sort of grant, whether it's in GST or something that we've paid in the last 5, 10, 15 years, where we can get some form of grant back, whether it's a percentage or whatever that may be. And that could be just over a 6-month period. So, in answer to your question, it's time. What will buy us time is cash flow, and that's really what we need.
Well, thank you for clarifying that. And we are just about out of time, but what's your advice to Cabinet, who will be meeting this morning at 10:30, we understand, to make this decision to move, if and when, to Alert Level 2? How important is that move to you and your business?
Oh, yeah, look, it's really significant. Level 3 really was an opportunity for us just to turn the car engine on, start the engine, get some staff in. To get to Level 2 means we can actually start making some money, and we basically get the cash tills going again. From what we've seen over the weekend, there's been a lot of people around. People want to come back out. We've got all the protocols in place to be able to make sure that our customers are safe. I think one thing that hospitality has done really, really well is they're at the front of the pack when it comes to the protocols and getting their businesses ready to go.
Paul Retimanu, thank you so much for joining us this morning and for sharing your very sad story, but there's still a sense of optimism there and hope that things can be turned around. So we do thank you so much for your time. Tēnā koe.
Kia ora. Kia ora.
And of course, we'd like to know what you think. Please let us know on our Facebook page or send us an email, tapatahi@maoritelevision.com. Kia huri ake tātou I nāianei ki ngā rongo kōrero o te wā.
Tēnā koe Shane moa tarau e te iwi. Kei te rongo te minita tāpoi o Aotearoa Calvin Davis I te tangi au e o te ahu mahi tāpoi o Aotearoa. Ia ki te whakapai e whārau mano te rahi o ngā kaimahi tūruhi o Aotearoa. Nō reira kei te kai kā te minita ki te nuku ki te taumata ohiti tuarua. Hei te ahiahi nei ka mōhio tātou āwhia ka nuku ki te taumata ohiti tuarua. E tātāhi ana te māpū mangaru Kingdom o Waikato, mōna e mahi ana hei rātonga tukurawa whaitake. Hoi e mea ana te māngai o Kingitu Heitia e te prehitini hoki o ngā wāhine Māori toko I te ora, ki te kore te kenge e toro atu ki ngā whānau, mā wai ke atu. Ko te whakapuakitanga a te manatū hauora, e rua ngā tūroro ma te karauna hou, ko tētahi kei te whai pānga ki te whare tiaki kaumātua. Hohi pera hoki o St. Margaret's I Tāmaki Makaurau. Ko te tuarua he tangata kua tau mai I tā wāhi, nā kua eke te tatauranga o ngā tūroro katoa, tūturu mai tūpono mai ki te kotahi mano e whārau e iwa te kau mā whā. Huri ake ana ki te riki, a kua nei ka hoki mai te paumuri mo te Kapa Warriors a Gerard Beale ki te ora, ka tāia e ia te tākoro mo te Kapa Warriors. Kei te whakarite tonu ngā kapa o te whakataitai NRL ki roto o Ahitereiria mo te timatanga hei te 28 o tēnei marama. Ka noho te Kapa Warriors ki Tamworth, Ahitereiria mo te katoa o te whakataitai. A kāti, koe rā katoa ngā kaupapa matua mo tēnei wā, ka hoki anō ki a koe, Shane.
Tēnā nō koe, pō takautira tēnā nō tātou. Under Alert Level 2, schools, early learning services and tertiary institutions will reopen their doors to learners. Almost all tamariki and rangatahi will be able to attend kura on site, including students in years 11 to 13. This comes at a time when students are reported to be feeling nervous and have been forced to come up with different ways to achieve credits to pass their NCEA exams. Joining us now are the tumuaki of Waitara High School and te wharekura o Hoani Waititi, Daryl Warburton. Hare rua, tēnā kōrua, ngā mihi nā kia kōrua.
Tēnā koe.
Tamari.
How have your students coped during alert levels 3 and 4? Let me pose that question to both of you. Maybe Daryl, if we begin with you.
It's been pretty calm and peaceful on the whole, to be honest. Mostly been the same level 3 and level 4. I've had 4 students at school with me to supervise. I've been spoiling them rotten. It's been great. The remainder of our 400 students are at home learning online. So yeah, it's been relatively calm and peaceful, to be honest. Yeah.
Pēhea koe hare, have you experienced the same? Have your students, have your tamariki had the same sort of experience?
Yeah. And so I think with all of our kids, I think, when you were talking with them, when you were communicating with them, a lot of them are more exciting. So when we zoom in Google Classroom and that sort of stuff, they're doing okay. They're more looking forward to getting back together. More than anything else, they want to get back together and really catch up with each other and just have that face-to-face with each other. So they're doing well. We're just going to see how things go for the beginning of next week.
Daryl, we've seen reports of students feeling nervous about NCEA because they haven't been able to complete some of the required assessments, and there are other reasons as well. What are you hearing about the students and their feeling towards NCEA?
Yeah, that's certainly been a big part of our planning from the beginning. It wasn't just our students, but it was our whole learning community, teachers and their own whānau and that. And so a big focus of our curriculum has been more on wellbeing, looking after each other, checking in with each other, having regular contact, regular video calls, a daily basis and so on with our students, but also reaching out to our whānau and our parents as they need to try and offset that. But certainly NCA is kind of looming. We've tried to offset that towards the end of the year with the promise that we're going to be all mucking in together right until the end of the year, and we've got this if we stick together. So, but no doubt our students are nervous about that, yeah.
Will anything have to change, Daryl, to offset it? I think you use that word to minimise the impact, the negative impact on students around NCA towards the end of the year?
I think there certainly needs to be some flexibility in the assessment and dates around assessment. I certainly, I had hoped that there'd be more leadership from NZQA here. It's been pretty much head in the sand stuff. So we're hopeful that something does offset that from a governance point of view from the top. But we're just roll with the punches. We're a resilient lot. Our kids are amazing when it comes to just mucking in, and we'll do the best we can by our kids, obviously.
Hare, as Daryl puts it, our kids are resilient, but do we have realistic expectations of them and what they can achieve during a year in which has been dogged in crisis?
I think it just, a lot of it comes back to how good your setup is in that whole qualification space. And so NCA isn't really the be-all, end-all for our tamariki. It's really drops out of everything that we do. So we don't use it leave it there as the focus of it. It's, to be realistic with you, so narrow, boring, all of those things. It doesn't. There's no value to the learning for the child within the NCA scope, within the NCA setup. And so we allow NCA to drop out of all of our different kaupapa that we have at our kura. All of our different learning programs and projects. And so, as a result, over the last 3 years, I started Hoani Waititi in 2017, and we turned things around a bit in that NCA space. And so a lot of so we've got half of our year, 13s already have their UE. And so they're driving on different programs, different focuses for those kids. we've got a good number of our Year 12s or our sixth formers, for those of us from that era, our sixth formers or our Year 12s who already have NCA Level 3. And so are heading towards... For us, our learning programs over the last, how many weeks has it been since the beginning of term? We started setting up for the lockdown about 4 weeks before. We didn't know the lockdown was coming. We just sort of thought, oh, there might be something happening here. And so we thought, let's jump ahead. And so we were quite well set up in the sense in our planning. So we had Google Classroom, PLD stuff going on, Zoom PLD going on, etc. stuff going on. And so that once we hit that the lockdown period, and then we went into the learning. A lot of our learning programs were set up to go. Not ideal, of course, because it's not like coming to school, but we planned ahead and it paid dividends once we come back into the online learning space a few weeks ago, 2, 3, 4 weeks ago. How long ago? Yeah.
Hare, your comments around NCA not being as important are interesting. What does success look like for students that attend Hoani Waititi, if it's not NCA per se?
Yeah, so success for our tamariki is around pathways. So it's ensuring that all of our programs, our learning programs at Hoani Waititi align to the pathway of the child, to the tamaiti. And so when it comes to pathways, it's about where do they want to go? What do they believe they want to do? Where do they want to go? And in some cases, we don't get it right because, you know, sometimes you could be 25, 26, 27 and you still don't know what you want to do. But nevertheless, we really burrow in and dig down into where our kids want to go, and then we align our programs, each child's program, to their pathway. And so there's a thing called vocational pathways, and not everyone really jumped on board the vocational pathways kaupapa, but we did. We grabbed it. We jumped on it, and we talked about pathways. So we got orange pathway kids who are in the construction infrastructure space. We got the red pathway kids who are in the manufacturing and technology, which is the IT space. And so we've got kids programs who really, all of the NCA, or a big part of the NCA focus or their programs have a red pathway standards that align to that red pathway, orange pathway, or might be yellow pathway, creative pathway, which is around the drama, performance, arts pathway. And so once they hit the year 7 and 8, we start looking, we really dig into the deep pathways. Pathways start right down in the Kura Tuatahi side. When they're talking about the colours in the pathways, hit year 7 and 8, they start looking at more specifically at pathways. And so NCA, so we have all of our rich learning programs, and they're quite broad programs which allow, let's say, for example, kaiao. That's working in the marakai and the gardens, and there's a lot of sciences, there's maths in there, there's art in there, because they'll build tomokana. And there's measurement in there, there's art in there, and they've got the boxing they've got to do, so there's measurement there, so there's pangaro there. We haven't got it right, I'm not saying, but that's where we're at.
But certainly setting up your kids for a successful future career, by the sounds of it. Daryl, if I can just come back to you, because we are running out of time, what does a shift to level 2 mean for you and your school, and are you ready for level 2?
Yeah, we can't wait. You know, we miss our kids heaps. Teachers are increasingly as frustrated as kids are when it comes to the effectiveness of their teaching. You know, nothing can beat the magic and the spark of a teacher and a students coming together. That can't be easily replicated online. So
how are you going to monitor social distancing? That's going to be an interesting exercise.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt. But on the whole, our students, you know, they have good mates which they hang out with, and essentially, you know, we know how our students move around the school. Our big concern probably primarily is around our corridors and transitions around the school. So we're working around things like that, obviously hot points like our student office and things like that, and how we can do some of the administration tasks differently. But we had a little taste of it before we went into full lockdown, and our students were great, you know. So yeah, we can't wait to see them.
Well, thank you both for joining us this morning. We really do appreciate your time, and all the very best for when you do reopen to all your students. Tēnā kōrua.
Thank you.
We'd love to know your thoughts on today's program. Please post your feedback on our Facebook page or send us an email, tapatahi@maoritelevision.com. Well, coming up after the break, Ngāi Tahu farmer Ash-Leigh Campbell has been named the Fonterra Dairywoman of the Year, and the melodic sound of the ukulele closes today's program. Ngāi Tahu farmer Ash-Leigh Campbell has been named the 2020 Fonterra Dairywoman of the Year. Ash-Leigh is the technical farm manager at Ngāi Tahu Farming and helps look after 8 dairy farms that includes 8,000 cows. Ash-Leigh will receive a scholarship prize of up to $20,000 to undertake further study. Ash-Leigh Campbell joins me now. Tēnā koe, thank you for joining the program. And congratulations.
Morena, Shane, thank you.
How does it feel to win?
It's starting to sink in now, It's been a couple of days and I spent the whole weekend replying to many, many messages of congratulations far and wide from people working in the industry as well as friends and whānau.
Did you think you were going to win this? And I asked that question because when you're nominated for such a prestigious award like this, you go into it thinking, oh, well, we'll see what happens, right? Then, of course, when they announce your name, and I understand they announced it at a virtual prize giving that was held recently, what was going through your mind?
I was stoked just to be announced as a finalist, and so even to just get my name in that sphere, I was blown away. And so it was a complete whirlwind when my name was read out at the virtual awards. My head went a little bit fuzzy and I went into a bit of a blur. So currently in my bubble, there's only me and my flatmate, and so she was there with me for the filming and gave me a big shake and gave me a big hug. And so then I kind of snapped into it and was like, oh, shivers, I've got to get in and do my acceptance speech. So yeah, I mean, I was, like I said, stoked to be a finalist, and so to be recognised as the award winner, it's starting to sink in just.
Well, let me read to you what one of the judges said about you. Quote, Ash-Leigh exudes energy and passion for the dairy industry and has actively sought opportunities to both contribute and grow in an industry she loves. End of quote. What do you love about farming?
So, I grew up in a lifestyle property on the outskirts of Tapatahi here in Christchurch, and so although I didn't come from a farming background, I've seemed to always just had this pull towards the whenua, towards the land, and so I stumbled into the dairy industry and I've never looked back since, and so I love working with the cows, I love working with people, and so it just seems like a real natural fit for me. I couldn't see myself sitting behind a desk 5 days a week. I have to be out interacting.
Absolutely. You have diplomas in agriculture and farm management and a degree in commerce, majoring in agriculture, plus practical experience in farming. What more can you possibly learn with your prize scholarship?
Oh gosh, that sounds like a lot of accolades, doesn't it? But to just give you a bit of perspective there, I did everything a bit back to front. You know, most people leave high school and go straight into university. I did do that for 1 year, but I bombed out, and so then I made the decision to obviously go farming, and I loved that. And then I made the decision to return to university in my mid-20s, having a bit more direction around what I wanted to do, and really returning to university here in Canterbury for the right reasons. Ever since then, I just haven't looked back, and I think if I can give others out there, you know, if they join the agriculture sector, that you don't have to go and do further study straight away, and you don't have to do further study at all. If you like being out in the land, working with animals and all that, you don't need a bit of paperwork. But I guess moving forward, you know, what am I going to do with this scholarship? My wings are obviously clipped a little bit with everything going on with COVID-19. I would have loved the opportunity, like some of the previous winners that have gone overseas and attended some courses over there, understanding with everything that's going on globally right now that might not be a possibility for me at this point in time. So whether or not we postpone those opportunities overseas or whether or not we look at alternative ways, whether it's doing stuff digitally. During my interview, I did say to the judges that I would have loved the opportunity to head over to Harvard University and do a business or an agribusiness short course there. So we'll wait and see what happens.
Well, all the very best with whatever you may decide to do with your scholarship prize. And thank you again for joining us this morning. And congratulations. Tēnā koe.
Kia ora.
That, of course, is Ash-Leigh Campbell, the 2020 Fonterra Dairywoman of the Year. Well, lockdown has brought out the best in some of our whānau around the country. For Waikato educators, Robina Wheeler and Travinia Warbecken, lockdown has been a time of waiata and manaakitanga. Tēnā kōrua and welcome to the program.
Tēnā koe Shane, ngā mihi kia koe ho.
Ngā mihi kia koe, o tira. Kōrua, are you both on the line? Oh, there we go. Social distancing. Love it. You're respecting social distancing. Well, thank you both for joining us. Maybe if we can start with you, first of all, Travinia. How has your school responded to the challenges that COVID-19 has brought to our community, to your community?
Lovely. Can I pass that over to my Timbuaki?
Of course you can.
Hi, morena.
Morena.
So, kia ora.
No, you go. You fire away.
So the way that our kura has responded, I think right from the get-go, when we moved into level 4, we had our kaiako and staff putting together care packages for whānau that we felt needed that support. We had hard copies going out. And then as we moved into the lockdown in level 4, it was a real whittle because it meant that the staff were taking on the challenge of setting up Google Classroom, school apps, all of those online tools. But we had to be responsive to our community as well. So we were well aware that many of our whānau did not have internet access or devices at home. So as soon as we moved into level 3 and we were back on site, we were creating our hard copy packs again.
What plans, Robina, are you putting in place for the eventual shift to level 2? And are you ready for level 2?
Absolutely. Yes, we've already drafted our health and management safety plan. And so we're waiting for the announcement today to get that finer detail, confirm things, consult the staff. That's a really important process to make sure that our school whānau are feeling safe and ready to come back. And just being really aware of those particular kaiako who may have health needs of their own and making sure that they are safe to return.
We were just talking with 2 principals of 2 secondary schools, and they, from their perspective, their students have handled COVID-19 pretty well and pretty calmly as well, excuse me, but are obviously looking forward to returning to school and seeing their mates. What's your sense of how your students, your tamariki, have handled COVID-19?
Well, I think I'm really proud of our community in that we did everyone wanted to keep their children at home where they felt safe, but we were able to offer that service to our whānau that had to get back to work as essential workers. And I think that, yes, they'll be in the same boat. They're keen to get back to kura, but they need all those assurances that they're going to be safe.
Can we ask the camera operator or the device operator if they can move over to Travania now? Can you tell us, Travania, about the ukulele group that's been set up? Norton Ukes, I think it's called.
So, thank you. As part of our kura, we've got a lot of different ropus that we support, kapahaka and all sorts here. But the blessing I've seen is we've had a ukulele group that's been going for about 4 years. And we just decided as a whānau to jam, have uk nights every Friday through lockdown 4 and lockdown 3, and it's really supported our tamariki and our whānau. So, look, we just got together and jammed, and it's turned into something that we're going to continue. And our tamariki are engaged, and it's an outward show of support for each other.
Well, we would really appreciate it if you could jam for us this morning. So I'm going to hand the time over to you. I think you've got an ukulele there that you're going to use, and you're going to play something for us. Before you start playing, can you just introduce what you're going to play for us?
Kia ora mātou. So I'm going to play a little jam. It's Will You Still Love Me Tomorrow. This is Mele, my little ukulele. And it is a song about love, but it's actually a song about hope and things for tomorrow, that tomorrow's going to be okay. We had a lot of fear and anxieties around lockdown and the powerlessness, but we've become powerful through the process in our communities, in our kuras, and with our whānau. So it's a way to just put our best foot forward for the next day. Yes, so supportive. Sorry, one more thing, Shane. I just want to make a mention to our Western Community Centre. Our manager there, Neil Poland, and a lot of volunteer work happened in our own community, and it was just such a blessing to have that, knowing a lot of our whānau was supported with packages. So just a shout out to Western Community Centre.
That was a shout out that was worth it. Thank you for that. Well, the time is all yours.
Tonight you're mine completely. You give your love so sweetly. Tonight, oh, there's in your eyes. But will you love me tomorrow? Tonight, oh, it was unspoken. You said that I'm the only one. But will my heart be broken when the night hits the morning sun? I'd like to know that your love is one I can be sure of. So tell me now, and I won't ask again. Will you still love me tomorrow?
Giovannia, thank you so very, very much. And what a beautiful, sweet voice. And what better way to start off a Monday morning. Thank you and your tumuaki, Robina, for joining us this morning. Tēnā kōrua.
Kei te mihi ki a ki.
And talking about tomorrow, coming up on tomorrow's program, we discuss the government's decision on level 2 and we unpack what it means for you. And we talk rugby with Farah Palmer. Well, thank you to all our guests and thank you for joining us today. Koina a tapatahi mo tēnei rā, hei kona mo tēnei wā.